Good morning, Robert Poole here. Today I want to talk about something that's very important when it comes to cold calling, appointment setting, telemarketing, whatever you want to call it. And that is the script that we use. The script is critical to the delivery. And actually the script matters whether we're talking about on the phone, which is what we're mostly talking about today, or even in person for that matter. You know, people fight the whole script idea, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but just stick me with it for a minute. And well, I'll show you how to put together a script that's very simple, that's easy, and will be very effective. You know, our company over the years, I was estimating it's probably 30 million calls plus that we've done cold calling, and we've got a lot of experience in writing scripts that work and ones that don't work, because believe me, we've tried both. But the biggest thing people forget about when they're cold calling is that the name cold calling, cold, as in they are not expecting your call. When you call somebody, all you're doing is interrupting their day, and you're an annoyance until you prove otherwise. So what do we do in situations like that? How do we get ourselves from being an annoying salesperson that's calling somebody to somebody they actually want to talk about or talk to? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So stick with me on this. The bigger overarching idea behind a powerful script is that we have to give them a reason to listen to us. If we don't give them a reason to listen to us and we don't do it from their perspective and we talk about ourselves and how great we are, we're going to lose it because people, let's face it, they don't care about you. They don't care about your company. They don't care how long you've been in business. They don't care what awards you've won. They don't care about anything. All they care about is what you can do for them, because we're all self-interested in human beings, and particularly when somebody's interrupting you. So let's talk about that. First of all, some maybe general tips on how to write a script. The obvious thing is, or should seem to be obvious, is that it's got to be very simple and it's got to be quick. You know, any advertising person will tell you, that when you get somebody's attention through an advertisement, you got to get their attention 2 to 3 seconds max before they, start spacing out on something else. And so it's a similar concept when it comes to a cold call. When somebody picks up a phone, you got to get through fast, and you've got to get your message delivered fast. I've had a lot of well-meaning clients of ours over the years come up with these. They'll present us with this script that they think is amazing because it's 15 pages long. And no, I'm not exaggerating. I've actually seen scripts that were 15 pages long. But the whole point is, number one, you're never going to get through all that. Whether you're doing it yourself or you're having somebody else set the appointment for you, which is the preferred way to do it. But if we look at the length of the script, that is a huge factor in its success. And again, it's because you're the interruption, and so you've got to very quickly get to the point and give them a reason to actually listen to you. So and again, one of the big things that I see with people is that they make the script about them. This again should be common sense, but we're all self-interested human beings. But when you're talking to somebody, you got to give them the reason to listen to you, and they don't care about you. Again, they don't care about your company, and so we've got to keep it focused on them. And the scripts needs to follow the HSC outline, which if you haven't seen those videos about what HSC is, then you really need to do that because that's an integral part of writing any kind of script. And of course, there's other things that we want to talk about when it comes to delivering your script, things like creating rapport through the tone of your voice, the speed of your delivery, things like that, your energy level, standing up when you're talking on the phone, things like that. But that's kind of a script delivery that's a little off topic, so we'll do a different video on that. But, one of the most important things too is that the script gets to be memorized. And again, if it's 15 pages long, good luck memorizing it because nobody's going to memorize that. So it needs to be something that's memorized and that just rolls off your tongue. Not to get off on a tangent about memorization of scripts, but the reason people fight the idea of memorizing a script, so to speak, is because they think, well, every conversation is different, and and that's true. Every conversation is different, but the difference is that the same themes come up, but in a different order, maybe. So somebody will say something and the salesperson will give a response to that, but it's the same response they've given to 20 or 100 people before, because our brains just simply go back to what we've said before, what's comfortable. And so if we haven't thought that out, if we haven't specifically planned out that script of what we're going to say, then we're just doing whatever just kind of comes to mind of what we've done in the past. And so the importance of memorizing a script is it allows us to sort of dance with the script, move around to different parts of it depending on where the conversation goes. But again, you can't do that if the script is really long. So we want to keep it simple, and we want to keep it, to a length that you can actually get through. Because, if you've ever tried to deliver a call and you've had people hang up on you, that's a big hint that your script is too long or you're doing something else that's, a major problem. Excuse me. Um, so, we've got all these ways to deliver a script, but, the question that we're talking about today is, what do you say? How do you write an effective script? Got to be short, like I said, but how do we get that across? Because, let's face it, a lot of the products and services we sell are complicated. There's a lot to them. And, it goes back to the bottom line that I've talked about before, that a lot of people get themselves in trouble in selling because they try to sell, not the features, because everybody knows they shouldn't be selling features, but they try to sell benefits. And again, that's not really what, the client or the prospect is looking for. They're looking for a result. They're looking for something that they're going to get. They don't really care about benefits of, your particular product or service. They care about what your product or service is actually going to do for them. So we need to focus our script and keep it focused on the result. Again, not feature barfing, not telling them how great we are, not telling them, it's got XYZ, features to it or whatever, or even has XYZ benefits to them. You want to really hone it down to what is the single big thing that it does for them. And then once you get into the conversation, then you can slip in more things about what are some of the other benefits, and that helps put that result together. But first of all, let's talk about, sort of a basic structure of a script. How does it work? Excuse me, the first thing, of course, you've got your, oh, can't be kidding, bad pen. Hold on one second. There we go. You've got your sort of intro, this is the, hi, this is Robert, I'm calling from TBR, type of thing. And, again, the intro is one of the places that people get lost because, again, the script isn't written correctly. Because, once again, people don't care who you are, what you're calling about, what your company name is, and I think our egos get in the way of thinking that we're important enough that they should listen to us. But they don't know who we are, so they don't care. And that's okay. They're not supposed to, because we don't care when somebody else is calling us and, we don't even hear them. And that's the next thing. I remember years ago, I was at this conference about executive recruiters and how this gentleman was cold calling and how he would get through to gatekeepers and everything. And he made the point that he said, as human beings, when somebody calls us out of the blue, we're not even listening to the first 15 seconds that somebody says. So if I say, hey, this is Robert Poole with TBR, guess what? They have no idea what my name is, no idea what my company name is, and they don't care. Because it's kind of like if you're old enough to remember cassette tapes, or tapes for that matter, any kind of tapes, they have that little part at the beginning of the reel that's like, they call it a leader, I think. And that's kind of what that is. It's sort of the leader before you get into the actual content. So it's the first part of the cold call is just like that advertiser. They're not even hearing those first few seconds. So don't get offended that they don't remember your name, because most likely they're going to ask you, if you can get that far in the conversation, they'll ask you a minute into it. Yeah, and so what's your name again, or what's your company? And so it doesn't matter what you say. You could call somebody and say, hey, yeah, this is Brad Pitt with Donald Trump's office. I'm calling about blah, blah, blah. And they didn't even hear that. I bet you anything. You probably call 50 people, half of them didn't even hear what you said. It's that dramatic. So yes, we want to do an intro because you can't call somebody up and just say, hey, and start talking. So you've got to do something out of courtesy, but don't get wound up on the intro. It's got to be there, but it's not critical. Like I said, you could say your name is Mickey Mouse. Nobody's going to care. In fact, they might even, if they're listening, they might find it to be kind of funny. And this, of course, makes a difference too. Are you the principal that's calling? Or are you the appointment setter? And who are you talking to? If you're talking to the decision maker, or you're talking to the gatekeeper, um, call these. It matters how you do it, whether you're using an appointment setter, you're making the calls themselves, you're talking to the decision maker, or you're talking to the gatekeeper, because this what we're talking about right now is sort of once you talk to the decision maker. I should clarify that. Maybe I should clarify that up front, but we're talking about when you actually get through to a decision maker. What do you say? And because getting through to the gatekeeper is kind of a whole different topic, and I'll probably do a separate video on that. But this is about, what do you say with the decision maker? So one, get that introduction out of the way. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. This is a big deal, though. Number two, this is where we've got to get their attention. Like I spoke about, advertisers know if they don't get your attention right away, you're gone. Same thing on social media, That's why ads are so crazy and everything, because they're getting somebody's attention. And it goes back to the concept in HSC of the hook. And a hook is simply a way of getting somebody's attention. It's a pattern interrupt, a way to get their brain to stop focusing on whatever they're focusing on. You call somebody and they're in the middle of doing some paperwork, or, they just talk to their spouse, or any number of things. They're thinking about their golf game, or, or they're worrying about their bills, or, any number of things, and you just interrupted them. And so you've got to get them out of that train of thought. And so you've got to do something that stands out right away, that sort of says, hey, with big flashing red lights, listen to me, brain, because it's worth it. And again, how do we do that? Because we've got to make it something that gives them a reason to switch their focus. Because if we call them and say, open up the scripted, hey, my name is Robert Poole at TBR, and, our company sells XYZ computer systems, and they're the greatest ever, and we've been in business for 20, click, right there. And why? Because the hook, it's like, again, they don't care about you've been in business for 20 years, and they don't care that you sell computers. What we need to do is get their attention, because they're focused on what they're doing, so that's not going to get their focus changed. They're just going to hang up on you. And so how do we get their focus changed? We do something that has some meaning to them. What's going to make their brain go, what? Whoa, what did he just say? The ears perk up, that kind of thing. And what's a consequence, whether it's good or bad, that is relevant to them, I mean, years ago, I remember this was, I don't get my years right, but let's see, well, it was 2008. So it was maybe 2009, and I'm sorry if I got the year wrong, but when Obamacare became law, initially there was a lot of confusion, because even the law itself, there was all this interpretation, and, there was controversy over it, all these kind of things. And it was this huge thing, and particularly in the insurance industry. And so business owners, people like myself, were very confused about what to do. They were like, well, I'm this size business, so does this mean that I have to provide health insurance now, or what do I have to do, or does the plan I'm using now, does that suffice? So there's all these questions, this confusion. And so we have a lot of commercial insurance agents at the time, and still do. And when we started calling for some of our clients, we said something to the effect of, hey, there's been some pretty significant changes in the, laws due to the Obamacare law, or whatever it's called, the Affordable Health Care law, and that are affecting business owners like you, that can be pretty substantial penalties if you get it wrong. And, something to that effect. I don't remember the exact verbiage, but basically it was getting across to the mind of the business owner that, hey, you better pay attention, because this thing that's a morass that all business owners are thinking about is suddenly, something that could get me in trouble. If I'm either going to lose money and get fined for it, I'm getting a penalty, get in trouble with my employees, any number of things. So as a business owner, somebody calls me up and says, hey, there's a lot going on with this new law, and if you don't do it right, you're going to get penalized. As a business owner, I'm going, oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I do. That's a good one. I don't know anything about that. What do you call it? Tell me about. And so, another thing, let's say you've got, one of the big things the last few years, cybersecurity. Let's say you run a managed IT firm, and there have been so many famous data breaches and things like that have come up, that, huge companies have lost, but also small companies have been victims of ransomware, just, script kiddies, and people just messing with their systems just to do it. any number of things. But business owners are starting to understand that even small business owners are targets for this kind of stuff. And so maybe you call them up and say something to the effect that, hey, it's Robert with TBR, blah, blah, blah. We had a client down the street from you, XYZ competitor, somebody they may know or some kind of thing that had a data breach and they lost so much revenue or whatever, just something real quick, a sentence. Like I said, you have to work on the wording, but basically something to say, hey, this really bad thing happened and it could happen to you, because of what's going on. And again, as a business owner, suddenly you're going, wow, yeah. What you're thinking to yourself, well, what would happen, if our data systems got breached? What if our client list got put on the internet or, any number of things? And so it's getting somebody's attention because it's relevant to them. Um, if you're a business broker calling somebody up and saying, did you know that 80% of small businesses never sell, the ones that are on the market, because they're not prepared to be sold? And again, as a business owner, suddenly I'm like, oh, well, tell me more about that. And this is before, again, this is not getting into anything that you do, anything specific that you're offering. This is about a problem that they have. And so we've got to get them through on this hook. We've got to get them to pay attention to us because they're still thinking about their golf game, the conversation with their spouse, whatever. So we need to get that brain switched. But so once we've got that switch, what do we do with it? Big surprise, continue on the HSC model. We've got to use story or that sort of thing, a very small, minimal story. But again, saying once you've got their attention and saying to that person, hey, we've got a client that is very similar to you. This was the problem they were facing, whatever it may be, the cybersecurity thing, they weren't prepared for it. And this is what happened to them. But fortunately, we were able to recover the data for them. And we've set them up now so that they don't ever have to worry about that again, that they're protected, they're insured, whatever. Basically, you've got to say, hey, here's somebody that was just like you, business owner or decision maker in this case. And we helped them. They were facing this problem and had this consequence to it that was going to cost them this much money and blah, blah, blah. And we helped them solve that problem. And look how much they're happier now, whatever. So it's a super mini story, but it is a story that they can relate to, a competitor, a business just like them, whatever, and how their problem was solved, the main problem that they have and what you're calling about. Because again, we're calling to solve a single problem, that we're going to give them a single result. Because if we try to go and say, again, managed IT firm and, hey, it's Robert TBR and, we can do networking, we can do hardware, we can do virtual machines, we can do antivirus, cyber stuff, we can do website, on and on and on. None of that matters. What we're talking about, we got to go in something very specific. And that's one of the other things that people get wrong in how to write a script is they try to use this whole wide range of services thing. It's like, no, you got to tailor it to something very specific. Once you get in there, once you get the appointment, then you can open up and talk about other things that are relevant to them. So we've got the quick intro, our hook, our story, and, again, HSC model, what's next? The close. And again, the close should be easy once we've gotten these parts right. Once we've gotten their attention, once we've shown them, somebody else that was in their same position and how they solved that problem, all we have to do then is just basically ask for a little bit of their time because no longer are we wasting their time when we called. Right now we're going through and we're saying, hey, this is a problem we know you have. This is what happened to somebody similar, how they solved it. And hey, can we talk to you for a few minutes about that? So that's when you got to ask for the appointment. And people, it's amazing to me. People will call up and get all the way through that. And then they'll say, hey, can we send you some information? And it's kind of like, going back to the 5 chemicals in selling, it's kind of like, you've got this whole thing, this cortisol, dopamine, all these things going on. And then you just kind of leave them hanging because they're going, oh, you mean after pointing out the problem and showing me how to solve it, you're just going to basically send me some information? It's kind of like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should start thinking about my golf game again. And you've lost them because people will say, can I send you some information? And then the prospect is like, sure, whatever, And then they try to ask for the appointment afterwards. And it's like, you've already missed it. They've already, gone down. The chemicals have already worn off. So that's when you need to ask for the appointment first. And then, if typically the way you do it is, hey, I'm going to be in your side of town on Thursday at 1 o'clock, or, I'm probably going to be there around on Friday morning as well, around 9. Which one's better for you? Give them a couple of choices, but only a couple of choices. Don't say, hey, when's a good time, when I could stop by? I've seen that. And it's like, geez. No, you got to tell people what to do. And then after you get them to decide on, let's say they say, okay, you can stop by at 9, I'll give you 10 minutes or something. You say, hey, great, Bob, thanks for agreeing to that. I'm going to send you some information, blah, 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 so you know who we are before I show up. And hey, could you do me a real favor? Because, my schedule is super tight, and if I understand things come up, so if you need to cancel or change or reschedule, whatever, please just give me a call. That's all I ask, So put it on your calendar, and if you need to change it, just do me the favor of canceling it or rescheduling it. And, you'd be surprised how well that actually works, because people like to feel like, oh yeah, I'm a stand-up person. I wouldn't do that to somebody. I wouldn't just stand them up, that if, I'm going to cancel, then I will have to call this guy. And of course, they don't want to call you. So, they'll go forward with the appointment. So that's kind of how you end up with it. We've, excuse me, we've got somebody who goes through this process. We got the intro, we got the hook, getting their attention. We told them a story, and then we're closing, just asking for the order, so to speak, which again, if you've done these first couple of steps right, this is easy because the person will be very open to the idea. If you're getting resistance here when you're asking for, the appointment or whatever, then something here went wrong, most likely in the story. And at that point, you can ask them, well, is this problem that we're talking about, is this not relevant to you? And maybe it isn't. And that's okay, because when you're cold calling, most of the time, you don't have that much information about them. You may have some baseline information, but, the more the better, but you may not, maybe you didn't get the problem right. And that's okay. Just move on. It is cold calling, and it is about numbers. So these are the things to remember. Again, script writing is actually very simple. You want to keep it simple, keep it super short, and just hit these 4 areas, this outline, and boom, you will have a successful script that will get to the point, get through, show the value, why somebody should talk to you, show them what you can do, and then all you have to do is just set up the appointment. And when you can go see them, then you can sell them. Then you can talk about all the other stuff, the results, as well as, that's when you can get into the benefits and that sort of thing, But again, if we focus on the result, that's what our prospect cares about, and it's all about them. If we remember that it's all about them, you're going to do well in sales and do well in selling in general. So that's all I had today, just to show you how simple it is. I'm going to do some future videos about, how to get through the gatekeeper and things like that. But for today, just know that it's a very simple process, like most things in sales. And all you got to do is just script it out, and you're good to go. And most importantly, take action. Actually do it today. Sit down and write out the 4 simple steps, what you would say, and how powerful it is. And it doesn't matter, again, if you're the principal making the call, if you're the appointment center making a call for you, which is the preferred way to do it because it sets you up as, bigger time, person, so to speak, more important. But it doesn't matter. The outline's the same. So go with that, and I will see you on the next.